What's up, gentlemen? This is Rising Phoenix Podcast, the podcast about how to rise up after your divorce. I'm your host, Michael Rhodes. Let's get into it. Hello, and welcome to the show. This is episode 44, which is another in the Real Men, Real Stories series. This particular episode features Robert. As you can see, I have the new studio set up, which includes a new microphone and new headphones. I hope that these improvements translate to better episodes for you guys. And with that said, I apologize for episode 43 and the poor audio. I was trying to make some of these changes. It didn't work out. I didn't have the right equipment. And so I went back to my old stuff, but forgot to change the settings within Zoom. And therefore, you got the crappy sound that you did. My apologies. That should be taken care of going forward. As you can see, the studio is set up differently now. And obviously, everything behind me looks different. Unfortunately, this was not done until recently. So when I recorded this with Robert, I actually did it in my living room. So you're going to see not this. I apologize for that, but I wasn't planning on putting that episode up on YouTube. But here we are. So you're going to get a better look at what my living room looks like. It's not that exciting, but if you enjoy this particular episode or any others that you happen to view on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you're listening to this on Apple, Spotify, or Google Podcast, please do me a favor, give me a like and subscribe as well. Here we go, episode 44. Joining me today is Mr. Robert Michael. Robert, let's just jump right into it. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hey, Michael. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. So I guess we'll start off the basics. I'm a 49-year-old guy. I'm a filmmaker by trade. So I work in marketing and advertising as well as on bigger sets for like Netflix and Hulu, things like that.
Oh, cool.
I'm a father of a 16-year-old boy. My journey to this podcast started July 23rd, 2019, when my wife and I separated. She left me. The marriage, we called it quits December 30th of last year. And then my divorce was final May 6th of this year.
Okay. Well, I know your story a little bit. So the reason I decided to have you on is it's a pretty much, it's a good story. It's, I would say at this point, a success story. So with that said, let's talk a little bit about some of the mistakes that you think that you made that may have led to the divorce.
You sent me this question and it was kind of I really appreciated the take on it. I mean, most places, most things that you hear or, in various groups and whatnot is more about, what she did wrong or what she did that pissed you off or, or he, depending on your situation, whatever.
Right.
So this one took me a minute to actually sit back and look at it. And really I'm looking at it with hindsight, because I wouldn't, if you'd asked me this question in the beginning, like what mistakes do you think you'll make in a marriage? I would have had no idea.
Yeah.
Right. But when I'm looking at it now, I think the biggest thing, this is after doing the work with therapists and whatnot, is the biggest mistake I made personally was I violated my own values. And even before that is I didn't have a clear understanding of what my values were.
Yeah. Bingo.
Right. And that's why I say I'm looking at it from hindsight, because,
True.
if you don't have a firm grip on who you are and what you believe and what kind of makes you tick, then you don't know enough to protect those things in a marriage.
Yeah.
Right. And so like, I grew up with my dad is probably the most selfless person I know. He'd give the shirt off his back for anybody, for anything. He has no qualms. And so growing up, that was kind of my role model. He used to have his joke, and we still joke about it, where he's like, I wake up in the morning and I turn to my wife and I say, yes, dear. And I'm sorry, honey, just to kind of get it out of the way for the day, like now I'm protected, right? Like, cool. Like any mistakes I make, I'm good. But what I never really saw my dad do is take care of himself. He never, the lesson he imparted on me is in terms of how to take care of a woman, or how to treat a woman, how to treat a wife. And this man's obviously successful. He just celebrated his 50th wedding anniversary.
Oh, wow.
So, I can't argue with his tactics, right?
Right.
For him, they seem to work. He seemed to figure it out, what worked for him. And so when I tried to apply that to myself, I had my values and his values are different.
Sure.
So his techniques did not work in my relationship.
Right.
So I'm going to say, oh, go ahead.
No, well, it led me to the question of how did you figure those things out? Like what, because I think that's incredibly important. And as a lot of people know, the alpha code is something that I went through, and that's one of the big parts of the alpha code is it helps you, or I guess helps you define your values, and that's the code. Your values are your code. You live by that. So I discovered mine through that process. But I'm curious in general, but I'm definitely curious here. Like, how did you go about figuring out what those things were for you?
Well, okay, so this is something that I had no thought or knowledge of. It never entered my mind until I went to a therapist.
Yeah.
So I mean, to backtrack a little bit more, I mean, I've been kind of dealing with depression off and on since I was about 15. And then I got into an industry, filmmaking, that has a huge problem with depression, and it has a 90% divorce rate. So, I mean, I went into an industry that kind of just like kind of doubled down on the problems I was already having and made it worse. So I've been in and out of therapy since I was 15. And, when you're young and you start therapy, you really don't understand why you're talking to this weird dude in the room and why he's taking notes. And I've tried other types of experimental therapies with like this, it's this EMDR,
Sure.
what is it called? It's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing.
Yeah. Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. So they put like electronic buzzers in your hand, and it buzzes back and forth. And that was cool. That helped me with a very specific issue that I had from a trauma that had come up with my first girlfriend. Not my first girl, the first girl I fell in love with. But so I'd gone through therapy for a while, and then when my wife left me, I was in a deep depression. I just lost a job that I'd had. I just moved from New Jersey to North Carolina, so I had no support network. But when she left, I was kind of like, well, shit, now what? Do I want to live in my parents' basement, or do I want to try to figure myself out and figure out how I'm going to survive? And so I found a therapist that up in Virginia that he walked me through this on day 2. He pulled out this stack of cards, these value cards. I've seen them for sale online. I have a free document, that you can cut them out yourself, and I'm happy to send that to you guys.
Yeah, please.
So that you guys can use it. And he walked me through this exercise, and it came up with 10. At the end of mine, I got 10 values that are most important to me. And then from there, what I really did was start setting up my life based on those values.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what I missed in the marriage was if I had, like, for example, one of mine is excitement. Right. And this is a big one. This is one that really kind of plays to me. My job is exciting when I work. Right. But when I don't work, I didn't have anything to kind of catch me from doing from like just mentally going down to the bottom.
Sure.
Right. And so as soon as when I was separated, and now like I can do whatever the hell I want, that was the one that really triggered. And that was the beginning of my process of healing. Okay. So that's what I missed in the that's my biggest one, was not understanding my values. But I have a hard time finding it as a mistake. I just think it's something culturally that men don't really talk about. It's like, be the provider, this is your role in a marriage, just shut up and do it. And we don't really get to put the time into working on us when we're younger. Right.
Yeah. 100% agree with that. It's certainly cultural. I think there is I don't know if it's an expectation. I think it's almost like a feeling. I know for me, it was a feeling where it's just, okay, now I'm married. Now I focus on being a husband, but it wasn't like focus on me in terms of being myself or figuring myself out. Some of that stuff for me definitely continued because I saw some, and like you, I've dealt with depression for, I don't know, forever, feels like. I didn't start therapy until my father passed away and I was 22. So, but I'd always battled. I had a chaotic upbringing. It's a whole thing, but I did some self-work, but it really wasn't. It was sort of like in the context of being a better husband, not really just being a better person and trying figuring me out. I certainly didn't ever have any conversations with any therapist or do any looking into what are my values. I didn't even know that was a fucking important thing, but to me now, it's incredibly important. Anytime I have any real big decisions or things that I struggle with, I always lean on my code, which is my values. So in terms of, that's a huge one, I would think. Just knowing that, like, sort of what makes you tick can help you get through this. I do believe that. But in what other ways did you sort of cope with the loss? What are some of the other healthy things that you were able to do to help you?
Well, one of the things that's been a kind of a constant in my life has been meditation.
Mm.
So I was put in the martial arts by my parents when I was 10.
Oh, wow.
And meditation was always part of that, beginning of class, ending class. And then, but what I did is after the separation, and I realized that I was in this deep depression, and I had a lot more riding on it than just, a happier home life.
Right.
I doubled down on that. And so I meditate 20 to 30 minutes every day, regardless of where I am or how I feel or whatever I sit. And there's a guided meditation I listen to, Tara Brach. I don't know if you know who Tara Brach is.
Yep.
She's a psychologist, and so her meditations are very, they really kind of resonate with me. So that's been my biggest coping mechanism. And even now that I'm the marriage is over and I'm in this 6-month relationship with this fantastic woman, and there's still anxieties that pop up about that.
Sure.
And because now you're dealing with messier histories, and you're dealing with lives that have been set up singularly, and now trying to figuring out how you want to mesh. There's a lot of anxiety and things that go there. So the meditation has been fantastic in that.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Like I dated, and I had a very small, short relationship after, but it was way too soon for me. I think we were 4 months separated, and I think it lasted 2 or 3 months. And she was a sweet girl, but it wasn't the right thing for me to do. And I definitely, for the majority of people, I caution against dating and relationships pretty early on. But if I remember correctly, you had a good bit of time to process this, right? I think, wasn't it a
Right.
good 18 months where you and her kind of tried, sort of, I think, to work it out?
Right. So when we first separated, and it was her decision to separate, there was some anger, there was some frustration. There's a lot of fear on both sides of it. But basically just an emotionally charged environment. So I kind of took the approach of what's the outcome that I want out of this, right? This is probably the smartest thing that ever entered my head during this entire thing, was right there. Was if she separates, and at first when we sat down outside and we're sitting in our chairs and talking, I was like, all right, well, she's like, I think we need a break. And I was like, all right, well, we're done, because if you don't know you want to be with me, I don't want to deal with you. Like, this is over. And like I said, that brought up those emotions, those powerful emotions. But I didn't want it to end like that. I mean, I thought about what was the end goal I wanted. I wanted an easy divorce, and I wanted what was best for my son. Right. So what's best for my son is having healthy, well-adjusted parents, right? Even if we're not together. So she decided she was going to move out in October of 2019. So we'd lived together for a couple months in separate bedrooms and whatnot. And when she decided she wanted to move out, I took the approach of, look, we've been together at this point, we've been married 18 years. I said, we have to be apart for 1 year in North Carolina. You need 12 months separated before you can get divorced. So I said, what if we just honestly did this way the system is supposed to work? What if we get couples therapy? We each go to individual therapists. We still live apart. We stay monogamous, and we try to go on dates, and we try to rekindle things and see what happens. And so we honestly put the work in. We went to couples therapy, and I've had my therapist now for almost 2 years. She found a therapist that she really likes, and so she's working with her. And we talked about our therapy sessions together, and the main issue was that I wasn't sure if I could get past the fact that she abandoned me. Right. So that was the main issue we worked on. But we honestly put the work together until there was a point where I just realized that I would never get past that.
Do you think that helped you to sort of keep a more clear
head and mindset? Because I mean, she wanted to leave, she wanted to end it. That brought up some things, but she ultimately kind of didn't, in a way. Like, you were able to slowly process, instead of abruptly being abandoned, like, nope, that's it, I'm done, and here's my new
Right.
boyfriend Johnny, or whatever.
Yeah,
Like,
right. No, it definitely wasn't like that, because she approached it. So it kind of went this way. She said, I want to take a break.
Hmm.
Right. And I was not in a mental state where I could handle that very well.
Sure.
Right. I was already in a depression. And so I was like, well, fuck this. Like, we might as well just get divorced then, because
Right.
this is not going to work. If you're not willing to sit here in the relationship and
Right.
be, better for better or worse, sickness and health, et cetera,
Sure.
then I don't want to deal with you.
Yeah.
And so then,
was that a defense mechanism, do you think?
oh, for me, absolutely. It was,
Yeah.
I was not in a headspace before she did this. I was not in a headspace.
Gotcha.
Right. I was already kind of fucked. I mean, my brain I was really down. I'd been down for probably 2 or 3 months at this point.
Oh, wow.
And neither one of us really realized it.
Gotcha.
So it was kind of a surprise when I go to my therapist and he's like, for the first time, he's like, yeah, you're depressed, dude. And I'm like, oh, I am? Shit. Okay. Yeah. So it kind of went that way. And then I kind of came back from that after a little bit of time to process and kind of adjust to what was happening. And I said, look, we've been together for this long. I was like, we have to wait this year. Let's try it.
Yeah.
But my goal was to come out of this one of two ways. One, the marriage gets resolved, right? And I'm perfectly happy with that, right? Because after 12 months, I've made my decision. Okay, this is what we're going to do. So, or we're going to end it. But I didn't want to end it in this emotionally charged environment, right? Because all that's going to do is then it's going to, people are going to get petty. We're going to be worried about every little bullshit thing, right? And I didn't want that. So I pulled a little bit of, Sun Tzu out, a little bit of tactics. And I said, well, if we try this for 12 months, and in my head, I'd already said, I'm going to go to 18 months, because if we stop at 12, then it's like, oh, well, you just gave up when our time was up.
Right.
But I didn't. I put an extra 6 months into there. And then I got to the point.
Was that for a sort of a peace of mind type of thing, in terms of, like, you can say that, you know what, you gave it your all, and perhaps it was in the back of your mind that you could say that to your son, like, you know what, buddy, I tried. Like, I really tried.
Here's what I've found about this is that when you care about everybody the same, then the decisions kind of become easier, right? So when I care about my happiness, her happiness, and my son's well-being, the decision is the same. My happiness is, I want to know that if I end this marriage, that I'm 100% sure. I didn't want to leave any doubt that I gave up on 18 years of something that could have been fantastic. Right. I didn't want to leave her bitter and nasty, because I was going to have to deal with that.
Sure.
Right.
Very true.
For the rest of my life. And I don't want my son to think that to have in his mind that when people break up, it's nasty and ugly. Right. So when I thought what met everybody's needs, when I started thinking that way and thinking from a space of love as opposed to a space from hatred or bitterness, then the decisions changed and they got better.
Yeah.
Right.
Man, I admire you, honestly, truly. It's why I want to have you on. I want to back up a little bit to the point where she said, she wanted a break or whatever. Did you have any inkling that there was anything going on? That was it a total shock to you when she said, I want to take a break?
I don't know that it was a total shock. It's kind of like when she got home, I felt it coming. And actually, I probably felt it coming a couple days before.
Gotcha.
She had this group of girlfriends that she'd get together with, and they kind of got real bitchy and stopped inviting her to things. And so she's kind of down about that. And so so my son and I put together this night for her, this wine and cheese kind of night, and hung out and whatever. And you could tell she just was not happy about it. And I kind of started thinking, like, okay, something's deeper than just the fact that her friends, that this group kind of kicked her out. There's more to it than that. And then she came home one day and she's like, we need to talk. And that's when I knew, before she even said the words.
Do you think that there were other factors at play? And I don't mean another guy, but I mean just like depression of her own or midlife crisis, or like, do you think that it wasn't just the fact that your marriage wasn't up to par anymore or whatever? I don't know how to fucking describe that, but like there was something else going on with her that also led to it.
Yeah. So I mean, the reality of the situation is that my in-laws or ex-in-laws or outlaws or whatever you want to call them. Well, no, that's not true. Outlaws are wanted, so they're definitely not outlaws.
I like that. I'm going to use that.
Oh, you could steal it, man. You could steal it. So I'd found out maybe 2 or 3 years before the separation happened that her parents had spent 15 years actively trying to get her to leave me.
Wow.
Yeah, actively trying to get her to leave me.
Sheesh.
Yeah, it's that they were, and this is no judgment against anybody or anything. I'm just putting facts out there. They were Italians, first generation born here, so their parents came off the boat.
Yeah.
They, but in a lot of these homogenous cultures, you find these over dominating male, patriarchs, right? And this is just sociological truth. This isn't,
sure.
There's no judgment here for anything about it. But you find it in Japan, you find it in India, you find it in China, you find it in Russia, you find it in Italy, Spain. So they had that trait, and the fact that I was not Italian, and she'd been married before, so it wasn't like this was her first rodeo. So you'd think they would have gotten over it, but they were just over controlling and overbearing, and she never learned how to keep them at distance, or how to tell them, like, sit the fuck down, this is my life. And she still doesn't do that. She's still afraid of him to this day. Even with her new boyfriend, she's still afraid of him. So that was that. I mean, that could have been a red flag.
Sure. Well, yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, some of those things are, hindsight, as they say,
Of course.
Well, that's a good transition to the current situation. So how is the relationship between you and your ex-wife at this point? Now that it's been, 5-6 months or whatever since it's been finalized.
It was finalized May 6th, so we're only like 3 months finalized.
Okay.
But December 30th last year was the day I ended it. I called her over. I said, "Look, here's the deal. I'm never going to get past the fact you abandoned me. So let's just end this." And then we took about 3 months before we even filed.
Oh, wow.
Like, we took 3 months, and we talked just enough to handle my son.
Yeah.
And then we sat down and we did our separation agreement, and we did our, and then we went through a non-contested divorce and whatnot. So, but we actually sat down at the computer and did the paperwork for the initial divorce filing. So I recognize my situation's unique, and I'm very blessed in that way, and I'm grateful for the way things have turned out. And so I don't want people to think that, like, oh, you know what, he just had it fucking easy. It's like, no, it wasn't easy in any stretch. But what did happen is my tactics proved effective.
Sure.
Where and here's a good example. This is when you reached out for me and asked me to be on your podcast. Was that my son's birthday was 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
I think it was 2 weeks ago, and he wanted to go to Carowinds, a big park down, like outdoor amusement park, rides and whatever, with a couple of friends. And so it ended up being his mother and her boyfriend, me, my girlfriend's 3 kids, my son and his 2 friends.
Wow.
And we all went and spent a day together at an amusement park. Now, divorce is only 3 months old, right? It's only finalized 3 months ago, but we're in a situation where we all get along. We went to, my girlfriend owns a bakery, and we went to her shop, and she made the cake for my son, and her and my ex-wife were giving me a hard time about my horrible cake cutting skills. And, and at the end, the 2 of them are hugging, and I'm joking and laughing with her new boyfriend. And it wasn't, we had complete closure. But then we also both have, we both came out of it with that same, what's best for my son.
Yeah.
So, or our son. So, when I think about that, and here's the way I've kind of presented this to him, which has been kind of fun. Like I said, I'm blessed. I understand that other people don't have this opportunity.
Sure.
But I like to think I maximize my opportunity here and earn some of it. But so I explained it to him, like, look, when your mom starts dating, or when I start dating, I said, you're don't look at it like somebody's competing to be your dad. Like, I'm your dad, but this is somebody else that has a vested interest in it and in you, and you can learn from. Right. So my my ex's new boyfriend is an IT guy. And so when my son gets online and does his Minecraft servers or whatever he's trying to figure out, or he's having a problem with his computer, then he's there to help.
Yeah.
Right. Or a problem with his phone or something, because he's an IT guy. He understands how all that works.
Sure.
And so he can learn. Plus, this guy likes to play Magic, the card game.
Okay.
My son's trying to learn. I have no idea. I'm not like a card game guy. So he could teach my son. So now my son is learning from him and growing because of this. And then my girlfriend, she owns 2 bakeries, so she's a business owner similar to myself, and she's got 3 kids, and so he gained 3 new friends.
Yeah.
Right. And he and then he's learning things from her that I wouldn't know, or that his mother wouldn't know. So there's really, we kind of set it up in a way, that it's not competitive. Yeah. It's not weird. I mean, but there's just not that animosity that's there, because we honestly tried to save the marriage. I believe that all that work we put in, all that time and effort we put in, left us in a situation of, there's still love there, right, but we can't be together, so it's not erotic love, it's just love, like friendships.
Right. Man, that brings up so many things. So I'm curious about your son, just in terms of how he handled it initially, and did he have any need for counseling or anything of that nature?
He didn't, his personality didn't change, which is like that key trigger for kids lashing out and stuff.
Yep.
His personality didn't change at all. He had a rough year in school, and I've always kind of held his feet to the fire a little bit about doing your best on things that you don't like. Right. Regardless of whether you like what you're doing, if you have to do it, you do your best at it. Whether that's from the Boy Scouts or wherever I learned, the Marine Corps, wherever I learned that, I learned it. And so he had a really crappy year last year and COVID and everything. So, I was chalking it up to that. And then we finally talked, and it was actually my girlfriend that pointed this out. Like, just think about what he's been through, between, I've only lived in North Carolina for 3 years. Right. And he's in a new school, which he goes to this early college, which is so he does high school and college at the same time.
Oh, wow.
But he's a high school sophomore taking college courses, so he'll graduate with his associate's degree and his high school diploma at the same time.
Jeez.
So it's an advanced school.
Wow.
And then his parents separated and then divorced, and so like there was a lot going on. Sure. And she's like, she goes, you gotta, she goes, I would think you give him a break and, whatever he needs. So she was the one who kind of brought it to my eyes, because she'd been divorced for 5 years now. So she's been a little further down the road of, what post-marriage life is like. So, and I was always open with him, and I talk a lot about everything. And he never mentioned that he wasn't feeling good, or that he, had any issues, until I said, hey, look, my girlfriend brought this up, and what do you think? And he's like, look, Dad, he goes, I got to tell you, I was a mess last year. He goes, but I didn't want to say anything because, you guys already had enough on your plate.
Oh, wow.
But there was no personality differences. It was just, he was the same kid. It was just that his schoolwork was suffering because he was distracted.
Yeah.
And so he and I had that talk. He hasn't been in therapy, but, but I try to be more engaged with him, and
sure,
especially with the dating thing. He went on his first date 2 weeks ago, which was fantastic.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
So now him and I are dating together, which is kind of funny. And so there's a lot to unpack there too, but,
so I hear a lot of, just mentally healthy things, and in your approach to this and how you handled it all, and that doesn't happen overnight. You didn't get this bomb dropped on you, and then all of a sudden you started reading, No More Mr. Nice Guy, or whatever book, Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, or whatever. So right. This is part of, it must be part of who you are. Would you say that that's accurate? That you're you've had depression and stuff, as many of us have. But just your approach to all of this it's very Zen-like, I would say.
Well, so like I said, I do have a big background in the martial arts, and okay. one of the key things that the martial arts give you is this self-awareness, this because you're paying attention, you're constantly striving to be better than you were yesterday, right? Every kick that you throw, every punch that you throw, every time you do a form or you spar, whatever it is, you're constantly trying to grow your techniques, right? So you have this huge self-awareness and this huge self-knowledge, right? And that's it's interesting you bring that up, because when I went and I did the value that value exercise with my therapist, self-knowledge was the one that popped up first. So I think that and while I wasn't, and then I did some time in the Marine Corps, so that was
I didn't know that.
that was the whole thing. Yeah, it was a short stint due to injury, whatnot,
Okay.
But still, what I learned just through the training there,
Sure.
that kind of gave me a set of skills that taught me to, you run towards the fire, right? So if, my therapist will say the same thing. I talked to him about it. He's like, all right, because we're gonna dig into something. It's gonna be, this could be painful. I'm like, let's go.
Yeah.
But there's only one way, and the obstacle is the way, right? So
Yeah.
I have that mindset, I guess, from an early age of wanting to improve myself.
Mm.
And so that every time that comes up, every time, when I realize I have depression, it's like, all right, I'm going to go after this. And every time it's popped up throughout my life, I've gone and looked for a therapist and tried something different.
Sure.
And, I may not be the best at solving problems, but I'm the best at not quitting at solving problems.
Nice. Well, I think that's such a huge, important part of this is not quitting. It's just, you just keep going. You certainly seem to have embodied that. A couple of things that popped up. But I think I'm going to focus on, you mentioned The Obstacle Is the Way, which is a really good book by Ryan Holiday.
I've actually never read it.
Oh, really?
Sorry. No, it's I study some stoicism. So
Yeah.
when you start getting into Marcus Aurelius and whatnot, then that comes. So
I have meditations. It's on my rather long list of books to read, but I'm familiar with the philosophy, and I have read The Obstacle Is the Way. But I'm curious, was there any books that you did lean on or ever have leaned on that were helpful in just your total mindset?
I think it was and this is an odd one because it's not really divorce related. It's You Can't Hurt Me. By that Navy SEAL, what's his name?
Jocko?
No, not Jocko.
Fuck.
The other guy, that insane runner dude. It's sitting on my nightstand.
David Goggins.
David Goggins, that's him. That's him. And pardon my language, but that fucker's crazy.
Yeah, he is. No, he says fuck a lot.
I know he does.
It's like every other word.
But some of the things that he talks about, they applied, and like I said, I fixed myself, and I found that love for myself, which then I share with other people, and I make it go one way, and it seems to work. But with his taking souls, right? When he talks about taking soul, about just being so good that they can't ignore you, right? They can't find fault in what you're doing, right? Just so when I applied that to making sure that my ex-wife was happy, when something would come up and she's like, oh man, she goes, I got this concert that, my boyfriend bought tickets for, but I'm supposed to have the kid. I'm like, I got him. Drop him off. I'll take him.
That's cool.
No problem. She's like, well, don't you have plans? I'm like, yeah, I'll just take him with me. Like, my girlfriend and I'll hang out with him. We'll just change. Well, that's fine. We'll just do it. And so I kind of went over the top with that, not being walked on, but if I could honestly take them, then I would, and do things like that. And so, so just that kind of that extreme ownership of a situation and being in control of the situation and realizing what outcome you want. And then just doing whatever you have to do to get there. He knew he wanted to be a SEAL, so he lost 300 pounds in 3 months or something?
Yeah.
Or 100 pounds in 3 months?
Yeah.
So
he's a beast. That guy, he is a maniac.
He is. And and I try not to get too much into the books about divorce. Because I don't know. I guess when it first happened, my whole life I'm kind of a traditionalist, a romantic, and I was like, I'm only getting married once. I'm just going to be the best husband I can be, and it's never going to, I'm not going to get. My parents just made 50 years, like I said, and so that's kind of how I was raised. So I kind of felt a stigma about it.
For sure.
I'm the first one in my family to get divorced, right? And so that's a big kind of that felt like a really heavy weight to be carrying around, and so I didn't want to add to that weight. So rather than go the the kind of the red pill route, or any of the books that are specifically about divorce. I went to the books that are about me, about improving myself. And I found that, like I said, I took some of that pain away, and because I just had it at my parents' 50th anniversary party. I was up in New Jersey, and I flew my girlfriend up for that. So she was meeting with family for the first time. And so this is, me bringing home somebody different besides my wife of 19 years by the time we divorced, so there was a whole bunch of anxiety wrapped around that.
Sure. Now, how did you process that? How did you sort of deal with it? Because it sounds like it was present. I mean, you couldn't avoid it, right? It's a thing.
Oh, right. Well, and so the way I kind of approached everything is just extreme honesty. Once the separation happened, I just decided I'm just going to be extremely honest with everybody about everything. And so what that's done has been, it actually, in my relationship with my girlfriend has been fantastic. It's been where I'm 100% honest with her and she's 100% honest with me. Right. So I'll tell her, hey, look, I don't know how to handle this situation. It's like, you're meeting my parents. It's like, here's where my anxieties lie. Are my parents, being that they're in their 70s, going to call her by my ex's name? Or, like that, it's that kind of stuff. Right. And you're like, I don't want to do that. I'm like, so I did what I could. I prepped everybody, and I was like, look, this girl's, gaining importance in my life. Obviously, if I'm willing to fly her up here and introduce her to you guys and all that other stuff. And so I had the conversations, but I had it with her. And I told her what my anxieties were about meeting because she met a bunch of my friends too. Like, we made a whole weekend out of it, and it was fun. Cool. It was a cool trip and stuff. But yeah. And so I found that just being extremely honest with people in the post-marriage world has been really helpful, because we all have our traumas.
Oh, for sure.
My girlfriend was married. She got divorced 5 years ago. And I'm the first guy that she's introduced to her kids. In 5 years, she's never had a relationship over like 2 or 3 months. They just kind of fizzle out, and that's it. I've met in fact, I slept over her house the other night while her kids were there for the first time. So, so that's like some big major steps. And so she's got traumas around that. True. And when you realize we all have the trauma, then there's no stigma about saying, like, look, I battle depression. As soon as I said that to her, she goes, me too. And we talked about the depression. So we bonded over that.
Yeah.
We talked about how our marriages ended. Yeah. And how we dealt with it. And she was, I was already dating her when mine got finalized. So, so there was some nerves I had there, and she was great, and because she'd already been there.
Yeah.
So you end up supporting. You can find a supporting way to do it without it being all just about the pomp and circumstance of like that traditional, dating, everything's happy, and
right.
You can find connection in your suffering. I mean, it's like the whole military is based on that, isn't it?
Yeah, right? Very true. Yeah,
right. You suffer together, and and you've been through that, and so when you start coming at it from that direction, for me anyway, it made a much bigger difference rather than trying to hide all the perceived flaws that I felt I had.
Yeah.
When I because the person that's going to want to be with me is going to eventually find them.
Yeah. Well, right? Yeah, for sure. You can't. There's only so much you can sweep under a rug. Eventually,
right. What they say after 3 months you can't hide anything.
Yeah.
So you can put on a front for 3 months, and then that's it.
Yeah.
Right after the truth comes out. So
I'm curious. So you man, so many things pop in my head. So you've definitely done some work on yourself, which I think is a huge part of all of this. So did that allow you to be, and this is my theory, did that allow you to be a bit more choosy? Like did in other words, like when you started dating, did you have dates and you're like, red flag, like next kind of thing? Because you can be alone, you've done the self-work, like you're confident in who you are, to a point of, as we all have our struggles. But do you think that allowed you to well, if you did have crappy dates, did it allow you peace in being alone and not grabbing on the first life preserver you could find?
Okay, so I'll start. Yeah, this will be a fun answer for you. I think you'll enjoy it. So all that work that I did while we were separated, like I said, we worked on us as a couple, right? And in doing that, I learned a lot about how I was in a relationship, right? So I kind of was able to fix the things that I didn't do well, right? Or be a little bit more open-minded to issues that I didn't think were issues, right? So I became a better person in a relationship.
Right.
Through all the personal therapy, I became a better person alone. And because we were still dating, we were still living apart, right? I knew I could live on my own. I was 100% comfortable with myself when we ended. The girl I've been with now for 6 months was my first date in 20 years.
Oh, wow.
And but I was open to anything.
Right.
And and like I said, this whole story, I know it just sounds like, oh my God, this guy had it so fucking easy, but but I did the work beforehand. I did that 18 months of work on myself.
Sure.
And when I met this girl, we met on Bumble, and it was and we had our first date. I was scared to death. I mean, she had to kiss me. Like, it was that kind of like, I didn't know what to do, right? Because I still had that morality in my head, like, shit, I just ended this marriage kind of thing. Yep. And I told her that on the first date. I was like, look, you're my first date in 20 years. Like, that's a part of that honesty. Like, sure. If I'm nervous, if I seem awkward, or, if I don't know what to do, or like whatever, I was like, if I make bad jokes that are like, like, what the fuck's going on? Like, look, I just don't know what I'm doing, right? I'm just kind of like throwing shit out there. And she tells me later, she's like, that was very honest, because most people don't do that.
Yeah.
Most guys are coming out and they're all like trying to play suave and cool and sophisticated, and they're not. You're kind of losing your humanity when you do that.
Yeah.
He's like, but you were honest and you were real, and so at the end of the night, we're standing by her car, and she's just like, I'm gonna kiss you now, and I was like, thank you. That's all I could say, because I wasn't gonna do it. Like, I didn't know what to do. I still had that, even though we had physically moved apart, right? I had emotionally broken from her, right? So I had none of those hang-ups in my head. Like, if she's dating other guys, I don't care. I have no feeling about that. Like, all that stuff was done. The last wall that I had to break down was that intimacy with another woman, right? And so that was the head game I had. I mean, we had we got to our third date, which is the first one where we were intimate, and man, I was a fucking mess. It was ugly. It was ugly in a bad way, but she knew this.
Yeah.
She knew, like, okay, for 20 years you've been with one person.
Yeah.
And then later on I got into some maybe I don't know, a month later, a couple of weeks later, whatever, I kind of got into some performance issues with not starting it but finishing it. Right.
Yeah.
And so so I had to sit with my therapist and go over that with him and say, what the fuck's going on, doc? I mean, we said it, I got tested for low testosterone and for colon cancer. Like, they did I got the whole blood work done, but then and they said, there's nothing wrong here, it's probably in your head. And my therapist said, here's the problem, because for 20 years you've been conditioned to think, to see certain sights, smells, tastes, touches, feels, right? And now all of a sudden everything is different.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's different. It's everything from like different body shape to different room that you're in, to smell different, feel, like, just everything was different. And I was still breaking through that kind of morality issue. So, so I didn't, I'm not a serial dater. I don't like to date a lot of people at once. My whole life has been like that. I think once I was dating 3 girls at once for like 2 or 3 months, and I fucking hated it.
Really?
Yeah, because everything felt empty.
Yeah.
I like the connection.
Sure.
And so I would rather spend my time getting connection with one person than a bunch of what's the common term now? Pump and dump. Not into that at all. So so I didn't mind when I felt the connection and the spark with this girl after our third date, or third or fourth date. I kind of locked it up, and I was like, look, like, I feel this. It's like, it's like, I don't want to be, I'm not dating other people, and I don't want you to be dating it. Can we explore this and see where it's going?
Nice.
And
so throughout all of this, you handled it all very, very well, I would say. Although, like you said, the 18 months are sort of in the background, and that guy is not the guy we're hearing from now. So, it's easy to sort of overlook that, if you're listening and you're hearing how he is now. But I'm curious, throughout all of this, from separation to today, were there mistakes made? Were there things that you're like, I wish I would have done it that way, or I should have done it this way, or
You mean in the last 8 months, or you mean just in the 20 years?
No, just the last 18 months.
Looking at it right now, the fact that that I'm in a great spot personally, I'm in a great spot in relationship. I don't know that I would change much.
Yeah.
The therapist from the get-go, I think, was something I wish I had done, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Or 25 years ago.
Sure.
But then again, the universe kind of works in certain ways, right? So this had to happen for me to find a therapist that speaks the language that I understand.
Yeah.
So, all these therapists I've been to in the past, not one of them pulled out these value cards and said, well, let's figure out who you are. Shit, that's an easy answer, right?
Yeah, that's huge.
So
kudos to that guy.
So, what would I have done differently? Like, I don't know. I go back and I think about should I have ended it earlier? Because I knew it was Thanksgiving that I knew, or actually it was like Halloween. Between Halloween and Thanksgiving, there's two specific events where I knew the relationship was over.
Yeah.
I knew I wasn't going to be able to forgive her, but we were going into the holiday season. We had plans with, all kinds of stuff going on. And so I was like, I'm just going to get through the holidays. And then in January, I was going to plan on ending it. Right. I had one therapist appointment set for January 5th. I remember this. And she kept saying, what's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? And so she kind of knew. And I was like, I don't know. My therapist is after Christmas. Let me talk to him there. And I was just going to run it by him one time just to get some validation.
Sure.
And I didn't. I ended it December 30th. And then I went to him and he's like, so how are your holidays? I said, I ended my marriage. And we talked about that.
Yeah.
But no, I don't know. I'm really happy with where I am. So to go back and say I would change anything would be kind of disingenuous, I think.
Sure.
Sure, there are things that have, could I, what? At one point I had 2 therapists. So like, what can you do, right?
You definitely put the work in.
Luckily I'm in an industry where I kind of make my own schedule.
Okay.
So I had that flexibility, right? This is kind of weird. And I feel bad telling people my story sometimes because I'm like, it sounds like a pretty easy one. I hear some of these stories about people and some of the hell they're going through.
Yeah.
And I really feel for them. I really do. And but when I come out of it and I'm like, well, I don't know, like people think I'm weird because where I am. I'm like, oh, you're everything was simple. And I think the universe just said, hey, look, it's time. Maybe it was the 20 years I put in with those abusive in-laws.
Right.
Maybe that's what I paid. That was the price I paid for saying, hey, here's the exact therapist you need. Hey, we're going to say, once you healed yourself, you ended your marriage, we're going to send you this wonderful woman. Like, maybe that's kind of how I'm feeling about it.
Well, speaking of those stories that are a little bit more difficult for the man, for lack of a better description, this is the last thing I ask everybody. I think every single guest I've ever had. What are some words of wisdom, some advice, whatever, that you would impart upon that man who did just find out, maybe, hey, I want a divorce, or I want a separation, or I'm moving out, or you need to get the fuck out, or whatever. Like, they're just finding out. Maybe it's been a couple of weeks. What are some words of wisdom you would impart upon that man?
If I was going to say anything, it would be, I guess there'd be twofold. I'd say one, obviously, the therapist has been huge for me. So I would interview therapists.
Yeah.
I would not just take the first therapist and say that didn't work.
Yeah.
I find a practice, and the gentleman I go to, his practice has like 10 or 12 different people, men, women, old, young. And when I met with him, we talked about it, and I said, look, if you're not the right guy for me, I'm going to tell you. And he's like, if I don't think you're the right guy, if I don't think I can help you, I'm going to send you to another therapist. Right. And so I knew I had options.
Sure.
And like I said, at one point I had 2 therapists, so I was bouncing back and forth between the 2 of them, which is great because different, one was a woman, one was a man, and they helped me in different ways. Yeah. And so I think it's being aggressive in finding a therapist that fits you.
Yeah.
Right. Someone, like I said, the value thing is something I would mention. I wish I had known that 20 years ago. I wish I had thought about 20 years ago, like, hey, let's figure out who you are first, and then we can figure out how to set up your life.
Yeah.
Right. So somebody that can help you identify that and not necessarily heal your trauma first, because I don't think that that's the right path. Putting a Band-Aid on something, I don't think is necessarily the right path in this case.
Right.
I think it's more, you have to figure out who you are, because until you really know who you are, you're not going to know how to put that Band-Aid on. You're not going to know how to heal yourself. Right. Like I said, I mentioned excitement with mine earlier with the value cards, and as soon as we separate, I bought a motorcycle. Right. And I'd ridden before I was married, and then, the typical situation, oh, we can't afford it, bullshit.
Right.
But then that motorcycle saved my life.
Yeah.
Because every time I start to feel down, I go hop on the bike and I get that excitement, but that excitement's my core value.
Yeah.
So now I know how to heal myself.
Yeah.
I know what I need to do. It's not just a matter of, put it behind you or any of the, the typical stuff. This is more of the deeper, how are you going to build your house? Well, you need to have your foundation first, right? So get that laid out first. So I think that's huge.
Yeah.
And the second part, I think, is kind of doing a little bit of forethought, right? And not be reactionary to, she did this, now what do I do? But kind of set up your plan. What do you want your life to look like? I mean, it's completely changed, and there's no limitations on what you do. You can say, I'm just going to send a check and I'm going to go live in some little island off the Keys or something, and just be an absentee father and just send you money. Or do you want to have a relationship where, there's no anxiety and there's no stress, and you guys can hang out and socialize, or what do you want the situation to be? Do you have to meet at the police station to exchange kids because it's that nasty? Figure out what you want that to look like.
Yeah.
Right. And then, so once you know who you are and you know what your outcome is, then you can start putting the pieces in place to do that. I think a lot of people get caught up, and understandably so, because I was there for the first 3 months of this whole thing of like, what the fuck am I going to do? How am I going to pay my bill? Like, I was stuck in that minutia. And as soon as I started getting out of that and figuring out who I was, then things started kind of rolling a little bit better. A new client would come in, or a big job I quoted on came in. Cool. Now I don't have money problems for the next 3 months, and anxiety lifts. And so my depression got better. So it's just this like snowball effect. But I think those are the two places that it really starts is, figuring out, getting a therapist that can help you identify yourself, and then putting a plan in place for what you want your life to look like in the future. Yeah. Not everybody's got those options. Right. Some women are aggressive and violent and nasty about it.
Well, but I still think those things will apply, right? You still can only control one thing, and that is you in general. So I still think having a plan, a map, an idea even of where you want to be is way better than flailing with where you hope to be, right? And one of the things that John Kim puts, it's not his quote, and I'll butcher it, I'm sure, but it's a long one. It's in his book Single on Purpose, and it talks about moving on or closure. It talks about closure, and it says it begins once you give up on the idea of what could have been and start focusing on what you want it to be. Right. And again, I'm paraphrasing and butchering it, but the idea is letting go of the past, or what the past might have been, if this didn't occur, and focus on where do you want to be, because then you learn to let go, and that's the closure you need, because the truth is you can't get some deep long-winded apology if they can't give it. Maybe they don't mean it, or maybe they can't say it. It doesn't really matter though, because you don't absolutely need it to move forward. You need to let go of that hope, that or that dream, or whatever, of what in your mind should have been. So I agree with you. It's 100%.
That's interesting. Jocko Willing has a video out where he talks about relationships and breaking up. And so, when he was a SEAL commander and guys are coming, I'm getting divorced or I'm breaking up, and he'd be like, cool, let's go out to the bar. Like, right. And at first you're like, all right, why is that cool again? You're heartbroken. But then he says that the person that you built up in your mind doesn't exist.
Yeah. Someone posted that quote in Discord. Yeah.
Right, and it's a fantastic quote in the video. When you start changing your mind and your mindset to say, because my ex, I thought that here's this beautiful, nice, honest, loving girl, and that's not who she was. I mean, she abandoned me at the worst fucking time.
Yeah.
No, she didn't make me go to a therapist. She didn't pull an intervention. She didn't.
Right.
She just left. Right.
Yeah.
Well, the person in my mind never would have done that.
Yeah.
But she did that. So once you break that mold too, then I think that kind of helps with that need for closure.
Yeah.
Because now you're like, well, I need closure from somebody that never existed. What? Yeah. That's kind of like a ghost story now, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, well, I think that's an excellent way to look at it, and some excellent words of advice. I want to thank you for coming on today and just sitting down with me and talking. This was a great conversation, and I think that while it's yours is probably in some ways the template. It's not easy to get there, and also if you're not able, I think, and I'm talking to the audience, if you guys aren't able to imagine that scenario where he's at, that's okay. You don't have to get to there. But you do have to define where you want to get. And I think that's the takeaway. So I thank you, brother. I appreciate you. And I'm hopeful that someday I can reflect back and look at it in the way that you do.
Well, I hope somebody can, take some knowledge from my experiences. And, like I said, I feel blessed, and I do feel the pain of a lot of guys out there. So, that there's a rainbow kind of, or gold at the end of the rainbow. Is that the saying? There's something to look forward to and something to work for, and something to not get all depressed and bent about. Just go to work and.
Yep. Amen.
I hope it helps.
Yep. So, thanks, brother. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Yep. Take care.
Bye.
Well, that's a wrap for episode 44. I want to thank Robert for taking the time to sit down and talk with me. I admire Robert's ability to have a relationship with his ex-wife. It's probably the type of relationship we'd all should aspire to, but I'm not there, and I don't know that I ever will be. And if you're not there either, that's okay. All you have to do is be amicable for your children. It's possible that having a great relationship is better for them, but if that's at the sacrifice of your own mental health, then I don't think it ultimately translates into better for them, because an unhealthy you will be felt by your children. Until next time, take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Thank you so much for watching and or listening. Thank you to Nick Coyle and Lifer for allowing me to use their song, Born Again, which you're hearing now and at the intro to the podcast. Thank you to Justin Dulahanty and all of my brothers at the Alpha Code. Please visit the website, risingphoenixpodcast.com, to connect with me and other like-minded men who are looking to thrive and grow after their divorce. And remember to surround yourself with people who add value to your life, who challenge you to be greater than you were yesterday, who sprinkle magic into your existence like you do to theirs. Life is not meant to be done alone. Find your tribe.